especially those who are visiting with us. We are just thankful God has blessed you to be here. You are our honored guest. And we are pleased and thankful that you have come to worship God with us today in spirit and in truth. We want to get right on into our lesson as we continue with this part of our theme topic, seeing Him face to face. And as we deal with this particular theme topic over the weeks, the idea is to get a clear understanding of God, to really see God clearly, who God is, what part God plays in your life and in the life of every man, to really see God in terms of His qualities, His attributes, and how does that relate to you and your very existence right now. Seeing God first to face, meaning understanding clearly God's plan to save you and to get you back home where you came from. Seeing God clearly means understanding your real essence today based upon your origin, not on your earthly presence. Oftentimes people will associate their being based on their earthly presence and not based on their origin. And whenever you do that, your priorities are lowered. Your expectations are lowered. Your sense of accomplishment is lowered because you only think in terms of the highest standard that earth and man has established. Those things which pertain to God are far higher and far greater than that. And to understand that that is supposed to be a part of who you are, and who you are, first of all, comes with recognizing the place of your origin, not the place of your arrival. So anyway, as we deal with seeing God face to face, we dealt with the first part of that series, and now we're in the second part. We dealt with assets, and now we're dealing with dusty roads, deep canyons, and dark caves. Last Sunday we talked about dusty roads, and today we're going to deal with deep canyons. And I know when you all heard the scripture reading read from Exodus chapter 14, there's a lot of good preaching stuff in there.
Amen.
But I didn't have that read, excuse me, to preach about the deliverance out of Egypt so much as to give an indication of how God operates and a metaphorically application of the deep canyon experience. In the text, what had taken place, and those who've been in my Old Testament survey course, I'm sure you can visualize this. Imagine that you are the Israelites. You have been freed from Egypt, and so you start your route toward Canaan. You've just left Egypt, and you are making this direct route toward Canaan. However, God turns you around and starts you in a direction which is actually back toward Egypt, and then brings you south. Tells you to camp at a location where you have canyon walls on both sides, the Red Sea in front of you, and Egypt behind you. And so there you are camped in your canyon situation. When you start heading back toward Egypt, word comes to Pharaoh that these people, the wilderness, has them confused. They're nothing but slaves anyway, and they don't know where they're going, and lo and behold, they're headed back in our direction. And now, not only have they headed back in our direction, now they have pinned themselves and trapped themselves in a canyon location with the Red Sea in front of them so they can't get across. And so, you ever heard that term, fish in a barrel? Yes. So what happens is the Egyptians are coming after them because they are in a canyon. And they feel that they have them trapped. Now, we're going to come back to that story at the end. But to give you an idea, when we talk about a canyon experience in life, the pathway of life, there will be deep canyons. You're going to go through deep canyons. And in this lesson, when we talk about deep canyons, it represents a life where movement is limited. There is uncertainty that can be traumatizing and even life-changing. When we talk about deep canyons in this lesson, It is the times in life when you cannot see far down the path. It is not unusual under those particular circumstances to run into dead ends. You know, when you've got plans for things, you start trying to make stuff happen, and all of a sudden everything just kind of dead ends.
Amen.
Then you have to back up, then you have to backtrack, then you have to redirect. You ever heard people say plan A? That didn't work, so we go to plan B. And if plan B doesn't work, you go to plan C. That's sometimes running into those dead ends. Because in the canyon, you can't see that far of what's up ahead. When we talk about deep canyons in our lesson, we're talking about situations where the daylight is short-lived. You know, when you're down off in the canyon, you don't get the full benefit of sunrise and sunset. Daylight is short-lived. And what I mean by that are the things, when things are going well and you're able to at least see for a short distance. Right. You ever heard people say, I think I'm going to see my way through this? You can see for a short distance. However, in canyons, while the daylight is short-lived, darkness seems to linger for longer periods of time. Troubles, sorrows, difficulties, problems, adversities seem like they hang around longer. But one thing about the canyon travel is that you can only go forward. You can't go back. At least you should not want to go back. You can, but to go back is definite doom because there's a lion coming up the path. And along with him comes death. And he's traveling and he's looking for you, and he's coming from where you came from. You who were dead in your trespasses and sins. He's looking for where you came from because you've been delivered from him, and guess what? He's after the claim was his, and so he thinks. So you can't go back, so you've got to go forward. Well, here's the question in that. We haven't got to the lesson yet, y'all. Bear with me. Here's the question in that. What is God's involvement in canyon travel? What is God's involvement? Some people, when they're in canyon situations, they call it bad luck. And they say, I'm having bad luck right now. Some people would say, well, it's the devil's trick. I made him mad and now he's after me. Okay, and so they consider in a canyon episode of life, Satan is trying to get them, and they might say, I ask y'all to pray to get the God will get the Satan off my back. That he'll back him off, and that he will do whatever because you're in a canyon episode of life. Others simply throw up their hands and say, what did I do wrong? And simply consider it maybe a punishment. One of the things about an experience, if you don't understand the experience, you can't learn from the experience. Amen. Let me say that again. Amen. One of the things about experiences in life, if you do not understand the experience, you cannot learn from the experience. And so the idea is understanding. And when we talk about the canyon episodes of life in this lesson, we want to look at learning how we use those incidents, how we use those episodes to learn from them. All right, so what we're going to do what we did last week. Get you all on a bus. Get ready to go on some field trips. Y'all ready to go? Amen. Yeah, y'all wake up. You're going to miss the bus if you don't. Y'all ready to go? We're going to go on get on the bus. We're going to take some field trips. And what we want to do is want to make some observations of folk who are dealing with the canyon experience. And that will help you understand your canyon experience and what they are all about. One of the things, if you'll notice in the text in Exodus, is that Israel was in a canyon. But the enemy didn't put them in it. Pharaoh did not put them in it. Okay? As a matter of fact, God led them to it. I'll say that again. Canyons are not thrown at you. They're not something that's put on you. They're not something that you are tricked into. They are automatically a part of your living. But they actually serve a purpose. The idea of going through difficulties is not merely to make you tough. There's a lot more to it than that. God is not that simple. Hey, God is wise and all wise. And anytime God does something, the purpose is great. And the magnitude of wisdom is deep. but you won't get it if you don't understand it. So we'll see if we can't help you understand that in this path of life, in this road of life that we travel, you will have dusty roads and you'll have deep canyons. And so we want to talk about the canyon experiences. Well, if you're on the bus, we're getting ready to take off, and we're going to go to a place called Sidonia, in our text, which is 1 Kings chapter 17, in our text, and I'll give you a little bit of information while we're riding on the bus to the destination. Elisha the prophet has come to Ahab because of Israel's sins, and he has talked to him and said, God is bringing a drought into the land. God is bringing a drought into the land, and as a result, because of that, you'll have a 3-year famine, rather. There's going to be a 3-year drought, a 3-year famine is going to be bone dry, and then after that, Elijah leaves, and God says, now, I want you to go to a place, there's this brook that kind of feeds into the Jordan. I want you to go to that brook, and I want you to stay there, and you'll get water from the brook, you can drink from that brook. I will have the ravens that will bring you bread and meat in the morning. They'll bring you breakfast, and they will bring you bread and meat in the evening. They will bring you dinner. Okay, and so so you'll be fed, you'll be taken care of. Well, so he's there by this brook, and so eventually the brook dries up. And when the brook dries up, God says, okay, now I want you to go to a place. There's a woman there, and I've told her that you're coming. So I made the arrangements, but I want you to go. Now, when you are Elisha, and you have to go to your people, and you have to tell them that God is giving them, is doing something and they're not going to like it. You are entering into your canyon. You see, you're now in a situation where you got to leave your own folks because your own folks are not liking what you're telling them. And they have the power to put a hurt on you if they choose to, but God's going to protect you. But you are in a canyon. When you're not sitting at the table in the house, but you're sitting by a brook, you're in a canyon.
All right, all right.
When you can't go and order you something, the birds have to bring it to you for your safety. You're in a canyon.
Yes, sir. All right.
When your resource of water eventually dries up and you're there by yourself and then your water dries up, you're in a deeper canyon. And now, in this situation, God says, now you got to move. But I've got a place. I've made some arrangements for you. And so what he does is he comes to this place where he meets this Sidonian woman, and she's at this well having her own canyon experience. Wow. Now, some of y'all may be familiar with this story. You can read it from time, but you're talking about a woman who's experiencing the same drought that he's in.
Right.
Okay, so this drought is causing a canyon experience for a lot of folk. Wow. Now, this woman is having her canyon experience from the same thing. She has a child, and she can't provide for the child. You know, when you have someone that you feel responsible for, and you know that it appears to you, rather, that death is inevitable, and there's not a thing you can do about it, as far as you see, you're in a canyon experience. Wow. When you are looking at tomorrow and you can't see past a few days afterwards, right. As far as you are concerned, your life will be over maybe in a week, 4 days, 5 days, but you are going to die of thirst and starvation. You in a canyon. When it comes down to the most exciting thing you got going on is one last meal. Sure. That's all you've got going. You're not waiting for a check in the mail. You're not looking for something to come rising over the hill. The only thing you have left that's good is one last meal. You're in a canyon. And so what happens is Elijah comes to this woman, and she's having her canyon experience, and he's having his canyon experience. And so when she comes to the well, he sees her, she's getting sticks rather, and so he says, you know, I'm thirsty. Could you get me some water? And she says, okay. She says, and he says, and could you bring me something to eat? And she says, well, I don't have much. I'll get you water. And I'm going to make this little loaf of bread for my son and I. We're going to eat this one last meal. And then we're going to die. So one thing about a canyon experience, you're walled in. You can't see much. Can't see because the thing turns. And so you can't really see that far down the road. And when you can't see, there's nothing back there to go back to. You can't see much. And everything seems to be walling in. You're in a canyon. When it seems like the sunlight of your life is setting. And it's getting even darker at that point.